Has anybody else finished Baldur's Gate 3 recently and have a real itching to play some Dungeons and Dragons?
I was recently commissioned to paint a bunch of D&D miniatures for a client, and I must say I am quite excited to get started. When it came to painting the evil Illithid, I was asked to paint them in the scheme of Baldur's Gate.
It was at this point I had to enlist a friend to help me identify some of the colours. They had also played Baldur's Gate 3, but my colourblind brain was starting to doubt literally everything I thought I knew.
Once we had established these lovely octopus lads were wearing a dark purple and red robe with a pale violet skin, it was time to get the paintbrushes out and get to work. The area of these miniatures that I want to have the smoothest blends is going to be the skin. This is due to the fact that I'm going to want the heads or faces to draw more attention than any other part of the model. With that in mind, I'm going to paint the cold flesh of these guys using my airbrush.
It's not just me that thinks these guys would be ice cold to touch, right?
I'm going to be starting from a deep purple. To achieve this colour, I mix purple from Vallejo with Citadel's Corn Red. I'm leaning more into the red in the shadows in order to make these areas look like they have blood running under the skin. As usual, I mix these paints in a small plastic cup with some flow improver before giving the skin a general covering. If you would like to learn how I use the airbrush, check out my video on the topic that will be linked in a card for you. Part of the reason I think these guys look so cold is that the skin appears quite desaturated at its highest points. To achieve this, I'm going to mix in a bit of Citadel's Administratum Grey to the previous colour, as this will make the colour lighter while subtracting a bit of the hue, as that is the nature of the colour grey. I don't normally like to use grey or white for highlights for this very reason, but in this case desaturation is kind of the point. The final layer I apply through the airbrush is further desaturated by adding white. However, I also added a bit more purple as the previous layer was looking rather pink, but I am aiming for the desaturated purple skin tone. Once I am happy with this foundation for the flesh, I jump over to using a brush and I pick out the ridges on the face and raised bits of muscle on the exposed arms. I use a mix of purple and white to really finalise the contrast between that first colour we applied and the brightest points. Once I was happy with all the skin areas, I had to move on to the robes. In the game, the robes appear as a deep purple with some splashes of red. Following this, I chose to use Vallejo's purple and Vallejo's black to create a much darker purple than had been used on the skin. I used this paint as the lower portions of cloth, leaving the top bits without any paint at all. I then came in with Corn Red to fill in the top areas I had left and start to wet blend the two colours together, as you go from super dark purple to a really vibrant red that is still darker than the skin so that it doesn't draw attention away from those areas. If you would like to see more on how to do wet blending, make sure to check out my video on the topic. Using Corn Red, I then picked out the ribbon-like bits that these Illithid guys have hanging from their cloaks. These really help to break up the look of the cloth a little bit, rather than having it all be the same colour. It's also worth pointing out that by continually using both Vallejo's purple and Citadel's Corn Red throughout the paint job, the colours go together quite naturally, and you get a fairly unified end result. Around the neck and head area, these tentacled triangles have some rather showy pieces of armour. In the game they are simply black and silver, so I keep it nice and simple by base coating all of these pieces of armour, including the arm bangles, in a black paint. The last colour group on the model is brown, which I use for all the leather straps and pouches. I use the nice dark brown by Citadel called Rhinox Hide. Again, I'm going for quite a dark base colour as I don't want this to steal attention from the skin or the robes. In order to start highlighting the red tassels on the cloak, I mix our base colour with Mephiston Red, which is a brighter red paint by Citadel. With around a 50-50 mix, I just pick out these most raised areas to help suggest the shape of the items. When I'm happy with that coverage, I do a secondary and final highlight of Mephiston Red by itself, covering a slightly smaller area than I did before. For the main body of the robes, I don't want to go crazy with the highlights as I want the wet blend to stand out. So all I do for these areas is use the purple that I've mixed into everything so far as an edge highlight. This helps to clearly define the border between different sections of cloth on the miniature. One of the last things that I do is to apply a light dry brushing of metallic silver over the black armour areas. I chose to do dry brushing as I only wanted the details to come up as silver, and dry brushing is known for catching details and bringing them to the viewer's attention. I then just need to do some simple leather highlights and get the bases ready, and we are done. I hope you enjoyed this departure from the normal Warhammer videos. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I will see you later.